Exposed. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. Chapter 16. Things did actually look better in the morning. My cell phone alarm woke me from a dead sleep, and I could see a bright, clear day outside my window. I was glad that I had thought to set my alarm beforehand so that I wouldn't forget after the concert, because I certainly would have forgotten in my distress last night. So now I knew that Josh wasn't the guy I thought he was, and that I had made a mistake. Lots of girls trusted the wrong guy and made mistakes like mine. I wasn't the only one, and this wasn't the end of the world. I just needed to put this behind me and move on. That turned out to be pretty easy during my fun day with my friends. My thoughts didn't stray toward Josh once, but I did begin to wonder why Mason had shown up at my house. That wasn't at the forefront of my mind either, though, because I was too distracted by Zoe's crush on her friend. I alternated between exchanging looks with Alice over their cuteness and worrying about him taking advantage of her. Devin appeared to be kind of nerdy, though, rather than a player in training. He was cute enough that I could see the potential for him to grow into being a serious hottie, however. If he ever realized that, and how much Zoe was crushing on him, he would end up breaking her heart. Right now, they were adorable together, as they acted like they were only buddies, but would have moments of awkwardness, during which it was obvious to Alice and me that they liked each other as more than friends. I hoped that they figured it out later, rather than sooner. I wanted Zoe to remain innocent as long as possible. "Puppy love is so cute," Alice gushed, as we watched them waiting in line to get on the log ride. She and I had opted not to get wet, so we were skipping it and eating ice cream instead. "Yeah," I said. "Too bad it can't stay that sweet and cute." "Kids are having sex so much younger now," she sighed. I glanced at her in dismay at that statement. "They don't even look like they've had their first kiss." "I don't think they have," she agreed. "I mean, just in general. They caught this boy and girl having sex in the bathroom last year at the middle school my mom teaches at. Middle school." "Wow, that's young," I agreed. "And at school. I'd be mortified." She gave me a sideways glance. "So, have you and Mason? Not at school, of course, but have you?" The memory of our hot kiss in the pool heated my cheeks. "No, but his mom caught us together in his pool. We weren't naked," I hastened to add, "but it was embarrassing. I think she assumed we were about to have sex." "Were you?" she questioned. My gaze flew to hers. "I don't know," I admitted. "It seems like I can't predict what I'm going to do when I'm with him. I actually kissed him first." "You did?" she asked in surprise. "Wow, I never could have imagined you doing that." "Me either," I told her in distress. "It's like I lose my mind when I'm around him." "Passion," she stated, apparently without judgment. I looked at her curiously. "Did you feel that with?" She shook her head as I trailed off in deference to the dead. "I loved him, but it wasn't overwhelming passion like you're talking about. It was this feeling when I saw him, like he brightened my whole day." "So, did you ever?" "No," she said. "I wanted to, but he wouldn't. He said that I was special to him and that he wanted to do everything right." "You wanted to?" I asked in surprise. She blushed. "Well, yeah. I had a hot jock boyfriend." I gave her a tentative smile, unsure if it was okay for me to joke back with her about him. Had she recovered enough from his death to be able to handle that? Her attempt at levity was short-lived, and her expression sobered. "I wanted to feel closer to him," she admitted. "It was like there was a part of him I couldn't reach, Something below the surface, you know? There were times when his eyes would go distant during a lull in the conversation or when we were watching TV. He would always make some kind of joke when I asked him what he was thinking about and be all happy and fun again. But I knew that he was avoiding telling me what was on his mind. I felt like I needed to get closer to him for him to tell me, and sex seemed like it could be the way to get him to let me in. She sighed deeply. If only I had known that something was bothering him that much. He never seemed depressed. That's what Mason said too, I told her. I don't think anybody knew. No, she acknowledged. He didn't share those feelings with anyone. He covered them up with his fun personality. But I wish so much that he would have told me about his depression. I could have talked him into getting help. Yeah, I agreed. But that doesn't always work either. My mom's one boyfriend was a psychiatrist, and he had a patient commit suicide. My gaze shot toward her as I realized that I had spoken the taboo word. But she didn't seem inordinately affected by it. Yeah, I know. My mom's cousin was on antidepressants, and she committed suicide too. I didn't know that, I exclaimed. When did that happen? When I was in 4th grade, she replied. It was the first funeral I ever went to. I didn't know until a few years later that it was suicide. At the time, my mom told me her cousin got sick and died. Wow, I'm sorry, I said, thinking how awful it was for her to lose 2 people to suicide. I only saw her once a year at our family reunion, so it didn't affect me as much as Chase. I was sad for her, of course, but... My ringtone interrupted her, and my focus went to my phone as I pulled it out of my purse. I answered it without thinking when I saw that Mason was calling me. Hello?
Are you okay?
He asked urgently. Yeah, I responded, starting to feel embarrassed about my behavior last night. I'm fine.
Erin told me that she was with you the whole time and nothing out of the ordinary happened, but you just seemed so depressed.
You talked to Erin? I asked in surprise.
Yes, I called her because I was really worried about you.
That was so unexpected and nice that guilt pricked at me. It was PMS, I lied, as Alice observed me curiously.
PMS,
He repeated doubtfully.
Isn't that supposed to make you bitchy? You seemed really down and depressed.
It's not just bitchiness. We get emotional too, I told him. But I'm fine now. Thanks for calling, though. There was a pause, during which I nervously waited for him to say something in parting so I could hang up.
What's going on, Ella?
He asked. My anxiety spiked. What do you mean? I'm out at Six Flags with my friends. I told you that's where I was going today.
I wasn't questioning your whereabouts, but now I'm wondering why that was your first thought and why you sound so nervous. Also, thanks for calling. That's very general and polite, which you never are with me. So, I repeat, what's going on? What are you hiding from me?
Nothing, I exclaimed. Do you need proof that I'm telling the truth? I'll send you a picture of me and Alice right now. I hung up before he could reply and leaned closer to Alice to take a selfie of us to send him. I stared at my phone afterwards, anxiously waiting for a response from him. He sent me a text.
You could have taken that any time. I'm going to FaceTime you right now.
I positioned my phone so he could see both me and Alice as I spoke to him. He watched me suspiciously, even after exchanging greetings with her. Do you believe me now? I prompted.
I'll talk to you later,
he said, as his eyes continued to scrutinize me.
Call me when you get home.
Okay, I agreed, and tried to lift that intense expression from his face. Do you want me to get you a souvenir? I can get you a t-shirt or an awesome souvenir cup. How about your name written on a grain of rice? That's something you probably don't have.
I don't,
he replied, his expression unreadable now. It made me even more nervous than when he had been studying me like I was under a microscope. Okay, well, I will rectify that immediately. I'll get you one right now before they run out. Gotta go. Bye,
Bye.
he stated in a monotone. I tapped my screen to end the call and took a shaky, anxious breath. What is going on with you? Alice asked. Why are you so nervous? Is it that obvious? I questioned. Do you think he noticed? I would say so, she retorted. What with all the rambling about grains of rice? I was trying to be funny. I covered my face with my hands and groaned. Tell me, Ella, she urged. What's got you so frazzled? I dropped my hands and looked directly at her as I began to speak. I didn't even have to think about whether I could confide in my best friend. Although we had been apart for years, I knew that I could trust her to keep my secret. She listened somberly, but I didn't feel like she was judging me. In fact, the comment she made after hearing the whole story confused me at first. So, why are you nervous about Mason finding out? She stumped me for a moment, although I had thought that it was so obvious that no explanation was needed. Well, I mean, if your relationship isn't real, you don't really care about him being your boyfriend. I don't, I confirmed automatically as I gathered my thoughts. The bet, I finally supplied. I'll lose the bet because I was cheating. Saying that now made me feel queasy and wrong, like I had actually cheated for real. So what? She threw out, like it didn't matter. I'll lose the bet, I repeated, more emphatically, to impart the seriousness of the consequences. So, what? She repeated the words slowly for emphasis. I know you won't do anything you don't want to do just to stop him from showing people a poem. So what is this really about? I stared at her. You don't know what I don't care, she interrupted. They're words on a paper, Ella, so stop pretending that's why you're with him. I could understand the naked picture. She paused with a shudder. But not this. I was taken aback. I had been worried about what she would think of me after I told her about what I had done with Josh. But she was grilling me about Mason instead. I didn't really understand her reasoning, though. I guessed that I'd been too vague for her to grasp the mortifying impact of those words she was disregarding. It's an erotic poem, I admitted. About Mason. Now we're getting somewhere, she said. Okay, so why is Josh even in the picture if you want Mason? I was extremely surprised about how she took that in stride and wasn't scandalized by my revelation of having sexual thoughts about Mason. Because I shouldn't want him, I blurted. I should want a nice guy like Josh, except I was wrong about him too. But you didn't want him, so that one doesn't count. What? I asked in confusion. Your instincts about guys, she explained. Josh doesn't count because you never wanted him. You just thought that you should want him. So, Mason is the only one you can use as an example about being right or wrong about guys. At least that I know of. Has there been anyone else? No, I said, deflating with that answer. So you still want to be with him? That's why you're using the poem as an excuse to stay with him, and that's why you're so nervous about losing him if he finds out about Josh. I gaped at her. No, I'm not using excuses to stay with him, and I'm not afraid of losing him. Why would you even think that? Because it's true, Ella. You still like him. That whole thing about putting his name on a grain of rice, that's the kind of corny stuff you do with someone you really like. That had nothing to do with blackmail or your poem. You just like him. I opened my mouth to argue, but closed it again. The feeling in the pit of my stomach overrode my denial. My anxiety had nothing to do with the bet. When I imagined Mason finding out about Josh, all I could think about was him walking away from me. I like him, I admitted in despair. I tried not to, but I can't help it. It's never gone away, and it's gotten worse since we've been together. You're falling for him, she stated. That hit me like a punch to the gut. No. It sounded more like a plea than a denial. She gave me a sad smile. You don't get to decide that. It happens on its own, whether you want it to or not. You can't control it, but you can control what you do about it. What should I do about it? I asked her desperately. She sighed. Tell him everything. Tell him to stop with all the blackmail bullshit and be honest. And you do the same. I recoiled from that advice. I can't tell him about Josh. Besides, that's over. I'm not going to have anything to do with him anymore. If Mason finds out you were lying to him, it'll be worse than if you tell him yourself. I thought you didn't like Mason. Why are you on his side? I complained. I'm not on his side. I would never be on his side, she insisted. I wish that you weren't in love with him, but since you are, I cut her off as the denial burst forth from me. I'm not in love with him. That's crazy. It is crazy, she agreed. I can't explain it, and I don't think you can either. Regardless, it's true. You've been in love with him the entire time I've known you. Now you have the chance to find out, once and for all, if you can be with him or not. And I don't think you can do that with this hanging over you. I was still reeling from her thinking that I was in love with him. You need to clear the air and start fresh, she continued. Hash it out with him before you do. Call him on all his crap, too. I have been, I replied absently. He's been saying he's sorry. Doesn't seem like enough, she said. But I guess there's no way he can make that all up to you. You either forgive him for it or you don't. I'm not in love with him, I said, speaking at a normal volume now. Then why do you care if he finds out about Josh? She pinned me with an intense look. Are you afraid of him? No. I shook my head for emphasis. No, I'm not afraid of Mason. She relaxed after a moment, seeming satisfied with my answer. So then, she inquired. I swallowed, my nervousness returning. Fortunately, Zoe and Devin came up to us then and got me out of this conversation. They were soaked from the water ride and laughing about it. Zoe's face was lit up with happiness and youthful excitement, and it was wonderful to see. My mood instantly brightened, and I could see that it affected Alice in the same way. She smiled the brightest smile that I had seen on her face in a long time. A happy sense of nostalgia overtook me as we began to walk toward the next ride on this sunny day. The sights and sounds of the amusement park were so familiar, and they brought back impressions of carefree days spent here having fun with my best friend. That magical mood stayed with us as we rode roller coasters and ate funnel cakes and cotton candy. All the walking and standing in line combined with the sugar coma to leave us all pleasantly mellow by the end of the day as we browsed the gift shop. Zoe had refused my offer to buy her something. You already paid for my ticket, and I know it wasn't cheap. I have enough money to get something small, and all that matters to me is that it has the name of the park on it. I just want a little souvenir. My conversation with Mason came back to me then, but I didn't admit to myself what I was browsing for after Zoe opted for a refrigerator magnet with both her name and 6 Flags written on it. I had drifted over to the keychains and hesitated only a second before grabbing one with Mason's name. Alice said nothing as she followed me to the register. Zoe and Devin were ahead of us and went to wait outside together after paying for their souvenirs. Alice left the shop empty-handed. I'm waiting to use Madison's employee discount wherever she gets hired, she explained. I've got lots of stuff from when she worked here. I was glad that she didn't comment on my purchase. Yeah, I replied lightly. How many souvenirs could you need from the same place? If she gets a job at Disney, I'll break the record, she declared. I have all the Mickey Mouse ears in existence. I laughed, and we joined Zoe and Devin to stroll toward the exit of the park. I got the inspiration to ask someone to take a picture of the four of us together, and we posed with big smiles on our faces to commemorate the end of a wonderful day. This was the only picture we had of all of us together, since we had taken turns snapping photos of each other throughout the day in pairs or with the three girls posing together while Devin took our picture. As we walked to the car, I sent our most recent photo to Alice and to Zoe, knowing that she would send it to Devin so he could have it too. I also sent it to Mason and put my phone away. I dropped Zoe and Devin off together at her apartment building, and they both thanked me again for taking them. I checked my phone before taking off and laughed at the text I had received from Mason.
Who is that boy band reject with Zoe? Tell him I'm watching him. Hint that she has an uncle in the mafia.
I showed it to Alice and put it away with a smile as I began to drive to her house. I see, she said. I didn't know he had a side like that. Like what? I asked as I glanced at her. A fun, joking side, she replied. I didn't know he could be like that. Now I see how you can like him if he's fun like that with you. He seemed kind of cold earlier. I guess he got in a better mood, I said. I know I did. It was a really good day. Yes, it was, she agreed, her tone warming. Thanks for letting Zoe come with us, I told her. I promise it'll be just you and me next time. No, she was great. They both were. And it worked out that we could still talk and catch up. Yeah, I acknowledged. I'm so glad to have you back. Me too. This year is going to be the best. I felt that wonderful optimism too, before my life started to unravel.